The Galactic Trade Federation's monitoring station hummed with its usual efficiency, processing thousands of transmissions across the spiral arm every standard cycle. Communications Officer Zefki adjusted her thermal regulators as she reviewed the incoming data streams from the Outer Rim territories. Her species, the Veltar, had evolved on a world of perpetual ice storms, making them naturally suited for the methodical patience required in communications work. The transmission that would change everything arrived at exactly 1447 Standard Time, originating from the Sol system's third planet. Earth, as its inhabitants called it, had been classified as a Class 7 Deathworld by the Federation's Xenobiology Department. The planet's extreme gravity, violent weather patterns, toxic atmosphere composition, and abundance of predatory life forms made it theoretically uninhabitable for most known species. Yet somehow, impossibly, it had produced a sentient race that not only survived but thrived in such conditions. Zefki had processed hundreds of routine communications from Earth over the past cycles, trade requests, diplomatic pleasantries, scientific data exchanges. The humans were oddly enthusiastic about sharing information, particularly about their world's dangerous flora and fauna, which they seemed to regard with something approaching affection rather than the proper fear. Their communications were always polite, if somewhat informal by Federation standards. This transmission, however, was different from the moment it appeared on her screen. The encryption was military grade, far beyond anything the humans had previously demonstrated. The signal strength suggested it originated from multiple sources simultaneously, creating a complex interference pattern that required her most sophisticated decryption algorithms to unravel. When the message finally decoded, Zefki felt her secondary hearts skip a beat. The text was brief, almost casual in its delivery, but the implications sent ice crystals forming along her exoskeleton. Strategic Command acknowledges receipt of invasion fleet coordinates. Operation Thunderstorm is green. All Terra Defense Grid stations report ready. Kinetic orbital platforms armed and targeted. We'll give these bastards the welcome they deserve. Humanity stands ready. Below the text was a data packet that made Zefki's breath catch in her throat. Weapons specifications. Fleet positions. Technological schematics that suggested capabilities far beyond anything in the Federation's files on human civilization. The defensive installations described in the transmission painted a picture of a military infrastructure that could challenge entire Federation battle groups. Zefki immediately flagged the transmission for priority review, but protocol demanded she route it to its intended recipients first. The destination codes indicated it was meant for the hegemony of Zarthak, an aggressive warrior species known for their expansion campaigns. The irony wasn't lost on her that a Deathworld's inhabitants were apparently preparing to defend against one of the Federation's most feared military powers. Within minutes of forwarding the transmission, her communication board exploded with incoming signals. The first came from Hegemony High Command, a desperate query about human military capabilities. The second arrived from the Human Embassy on Federation Central, a polite request for a meeting to discuss potential misunderstandings regarding recent communications. The third transmission originated from Earth itself, and it arrived with an encryption signature that made Zefki's equipment strain to process it. When it finally decoded, she realized she was looking at a real-time feed from something called the Terra Defense Network. The images showed massive orbital installations that hadn't been there during the last Federation survey of the Sol system. Weapon arrays that could glass continents, shield generators protecting entire cities, and spacecraft hangars that seemed to stretch for kilometers underground. The message accompanying the feed was addressed directly to the Federation Communications Authority, bearing the seal of something called the United Earth Military Command. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted beings of the Federation Communications Authority, we believe there may have been a routing error with our recent military communications. What you intercepted was an internal tactical update regarding our ongoing defensive preparations. We understand this may have caused some concern among our hegemony neighbors, and we'd like to clarify a few things about our current military posture. What followed was a detailed briefing that made Zefki reach for her emergency stimulants. The humans hadn't just been quietly developing defensive capabilities during their Federation membership. They had been building what amounted to the most sophisticated military infrastructure in known space, all while maintaining the facade of being a peaceful agricultural and industrial world. The briefing included technical specifications that shouldn't have been possible with their listed technology level. Kinetic bombardment satellites capable of delivering planet-cracking strikes, defensive systems that could intercept and neutralize incoming fleets before they reached the system's edge, ground-based installations that could project force across interstellar distances. But perhaps most unsettling was the casual tone with which they presented this information. There was no boasting, no threats, no attempt to intimidate. The humans presented their military capabilities the way other species might discuss crop yields or manufacturing statistics, as if having the ability to single-handedly fight a galactic war was simply a reasonable precaution for any sensible civilization. The transmission concluded with what Zefki could only interpret as a polite invitation. We'd be happy to host a Federation inspection team if there are concerns about our defensive preparations. We've always believed in transparency with our allies. Our military commanders would be delighted to demonstrate our capabilities should the Federation's Security Council wish to evaluate them. Zefki forwarded the transmission immediately to Federation High Command and leaned back in her chair, feeling the ambient temperature drop another few degrees as her stress response kicked in. 30 cycles of communications work, and she'd never seen anything like this. A Deathworld species casually revealing that they'd been preparing for galactic-scale warfare while everyone else assumed they were struggling with basic spaceflight. Her communication board chimed again. This time, the transmission came from the hegemony battle fleet that had been preparing for what they assumed would be an easy conquest of the Sol system. The message was brief, and for the first time in her career, Zefki detected something she'd never heard from a hegemony commander before: fear. Request immediate clarification on human military capabilities. Our advanced scouts report massive energy signatures from Sol system. Recommendation: postpone invasion pending further intelligence gathering. The irony was perfect. A species from one of the galaxy's most hostile worlds, raised in an environment that would kill most other life forms within minutes, had spent their Federation membership quietly building the tools necessary to protect not just themselves, but potentially every other world in the spiral arm. And they'd done it all while maintaining the most cordial diplomatic relations with their neighbors. Zefki began preparing her report for the Federation Security Council, knowing that this single misrouted transmission would reshape everything they thought they knew about Earth and its inhabitants. The humans hadn't just survived their death world, they'd learned its lessons so well that they'd become the most dangerous species in the galaxy, all while convincing everyone else they were harmless farmers and merchants. The communication board chimed once more. This time, it was a personal message from the human ambassador to Federation Central, addressed directly to her. Officer Zefki, we understand you were the first to process our recent communications. We'd like to invite you to Earth for a cultural exchange program. We think you'd find our world quite interesting, and we'd love to show you some of our more impressive agricultural projects. The weather's lovely this time of cycle. Despite everything she'd just learned about human military capabilities, Zefki found herself smiling at the invitation. Even when accidentally revealing themselves as a potential galactic superpower, the humans remained unfailingly polite. She began to suspect that this characteristic might be even more dangerous than their weapons. Admiral Krexnon had commanded hegemony war fleets for over 4 decades, conquering 17 star systems and earning his species' highest military honors. His mandibles clicked rhythmically as he studied the tactical display showing his fleet's position at the edge of the Sol system. 230 vessels, including his flagship dreadnought, the Bone Crusher, bristling with weapons that had reduced entire cities to ash. The humans should have been terrified. By all intelligence reports, Earth possessed perhaps a dozen aging patrol craft and some civilian shipping vessels. Their technology was adequate for basic space travel, but primitive compared to hegemony military standards. The planet itself, while dangerous to most life forms, would be perfect for hegemony colonization once they'd dealt with the native population. That had been the plan until 3 standard hours ago, when everything changed. The transmission that had routed through Federation communications shouldn't have reached them. It was clearly an internal military communication, probably discussing theoretical defense scenarios. But the technical specifications mentioned in the message had given Krexnan pause. The humans described weapons systems that sounded surprisingly sophisticated, and their casualness about orbital kinetic platforms suggested a military mindset he hadn't expected from a species listed as agricultural traders. Now, as his sensors swept the inner system, Krexnan was beginning to understand why the humans had sounded so confident. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, her voice carrying an unusual tremor. "Long-range scans are detecting massive artificial structures in orbit around the third planet. They weren't there during our last reconnaissance mission." Krexnan activated the main display, and his breath caught in his throat. Earth was surrounded by a network of installations that dwarfed anything in hegemony space. Orbital platforms the size of moons, weapon arrays that registered energy signatures comparable to stellar phenomena, defensive grids that formed geometric patterns so complex his computer systems struggled to map them. "How long to deploy something like this?" he asked his engineering staff. "Based on the construction materials we're detecting," his chief engineer replied after several minutes of calculation. "Minimum of 2 centuries using our fastest construction methods, possibly longer, depending on the sophistication of their fabrication techniques." 2 centuries. The humans had been Federation members for less than 50 cycles. They'd been planning this defensive network since before they'd achieved faster-than-light travel. Every diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been cover for the largest military construction project in galactic history. The tactical display updated again as his sensors penetrated deeper into the system. Asteroid mining operations that weren't mining precious metals, but converting entire celestial bodies into weapons platforms. Lunar installations that seemed to extend completely through the satellite's core. Spacecraft construction facilities hidden beneath the planet's ice caps and ocean floors. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted his thoughts, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." The human face that appeared on his screen belonged to someone who clearly understood warfare. Admiral Sarah Chen wore a uniform Krexnan didn't recognize, decorated with symbols that suggested extensive combat experience. Behind her, through what appeared to be the bridge of a massive spacecraft, Krexnan could see displays showing his fleet's exact position and composition. "Admiral Krexnan," she said, her voice carrying the tone of someone accustomed to command. "Welcome to the Sol system. I'm Admiral Chen, commanding the Terra Defense Force. We understand there may have been some confusion regarding our recent internal communications." Krexnan activated his reply channel, trying to maintain his composure despite the growing realization that his intelligence briefings had been catastrophically wrong. "Admiral Chen, the hegemony of Zarthak exercises its right to claim systems suitable for our expansion. Your world has been designated for colonization." Admiral Chen smiled, and Krexnan felt his confidence wavering further. It wasn't a diplomatic smile. It was the expression of a predator who had just realized her prey had walked directly into her den. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral. Earth is protected territory under several Federation treaties. But more importantly, we've spent considerable time and resources making sure visitors like yourself receive the appropriate welcome." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Ships were rising from the planet's surface, emerging from hidden bases in the asteroid belt and decloaking from positions Krexnan's sensors had read as empty space. Within minutes, his fleet of 230 vessels found itself surrounded by nearly 1,000 human warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than his own flagship. How? He managed to ask, abandoning any pretense of diplomatic protocol. Deathworld benefits, Admiral Chen replied conversationally. When your planet tries to kill you every single day, you develop certain survival instincts. Paranoia, redundant planning, and really effective weapon systems. We've been preparing for this conversation since we first learned we weren't alone in the galaxy. The display showed new data as human scanners penetrated his ship's defenses with embarrassing ease. They knew exactly how many crew members he carried, what weapons systems he possessed, even what he'd eaten for his last meal. The technological gap wasn't just significant. It was humiliating. Your intelligence files describe us as agricultural traders, Admiral Chen continued. That's not entirely inaccurate. We do grow excellent food and we do enjoy commerce with our neighbors, but those files missed some important details about human nature. She gestured to something off-screen, and Krexnan's sensors registered massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. Not targeting his ships, he realized, but demonstrating their capabilities. The power signatures were beyond anything in hegemony technology. We're apex predators, Admiral. Our evolution required us to outthink, outfight, and outsurvive everything our world could throw at us. When we discovered we weren't alone in the galaxy, we applied those same survival instincts to our new situation. We studied every species, learned every possible threat, and prepared for every contingency. The human admiral's expression softened slightly, returning to the diplomatic politeness that had characterized most human interactions with other species. Which brings us to our current situation. You have two options. The first is to turn your fleet around and return to hegemony space with our compliments and a complete record of this encounter. Your government will probably appreciate learning what we're actually capable of. Krexnan found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. And the second option? Admiral Chen's smile returned, and this time it carried a promise that made his exoskeleton itch. The second option is that we demonstrate why Earth is classified as a death world and why the life forms that evolved here are probably best left undisturbed. Before Krexnan could respond, his sensors detected new activity throughout the system. The orbital platforms were activating, and the energy readings suggested they possessed the capability to sterilize entire continents. Worse, his long-range scanners were detecting similar installations in neighboring star systems. The humans hadn't just fortified Earth, they'd been quietly building defensive networks across multiple sectors. How many systems? He asked, already knowing the answer would reshape hegemony expansion plans for the next century. Enough, Admiral Chen replied. We believe in thorough preparation. Every Federation member world that requested protection received it. Every trade route that needed securing was secured. Every potential conflict zone was analyzed and addressed. It's amazing what you can accomplish when everyone underestimates your capabilities. Krexnan realized he was looking at the end of hegemony expansion in this sector of the galaxy. Perhaps the end of hegemony expansion anywhere. The humans had spent decades preparing for this moment, building defenses that could stop not just his fleet, but any conventional military force in known space. We'll withdraw, he said, accepting defeat with as much dignity as he could manage. Excellent choice, Admiral Chen replied. We'll escort you to the system boundary to ensure safe passage. And Admiral, please convey our regards to your leadership. We hope this experience will lead to more productive diplomatic relations between our peoples. As his fleet began its retreat, surrounded by human warships that could have vaporized them at any moment, Krexanon reflected on the fundamental error in hegemony intelligence gathering. They had focused on human technology and military hardware, missing the most important factor. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were protecting an entire way of life that had taught them to survive anything the universe could produce. The Deathworld hadn't just created dangerous animals and hostile environments. It had forged a species that viewed galactic-scale military preparation as simple common sense, and who could discuss planetary annihilation with the same casual politeness they brought to trade negotiations. Krexanon began composing his report to Hegemony High Command, knowing it would change everything about their expansion strategies. The humans had been hiding in plain sight, building an empire of protection while everyone else saw them as harmless farmers. And they'd done it all with the kind of thorough, methodical planning that only a species raised on a world trying to kill them could achieve. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened exactly 72 standard hours after what historians would later call the Sol Revelation. Representatives from 47 member species filled the Great Assembly Chamber on Federation Central, their various forms creating a symphony of nervous energy that the environmental systems struggled to accommodate. High Chancellor Mordeth, a venerable Quillarian whose species had founded the Federation 3 millennia ago, called the session to order with all the gravitas her office demanded. Her 4 eyes swept across the assembly, noting the tension that crackled through the chamber like an electrical storm. "Fellow representatives," she began, her translator converting her harmonic speech patterns into forms comprehensible to the diverse assembly. "We gather today to address revelations that fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic security, military capabilities, and the nature of one of our most valued member species." At the designated human seating area, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat with the composure of someone who had expected this moment for decades. She wore a simple diplomatic uniform bearing no military decorations, maintaining the same unassuming appearance that had characterized human representation since their Federation membership began. "The floor recognizes the representative from the Veltar Communications Authority," Chancellor Mordeth announced. Zefki rose gracefully, her thermal regulators managing her stress responses as every eye in the chamber focused on her. "Honored Chancellor, esteemed colleagues, 3 cycles ago my department processed what we initially believed to be a routine military transmission. What we discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about human civilization." She activated the chamber's central display, showing the original intercepted transmission alongside the subsequent revelations about human military capabilities. Gasps and exclamations in dozens of languages filled the air as the technical specifications appeared. "The humans have been conducting the largest military construction project in galactic history," Zefki continued, "while maintaining perfect diplomatic relations with all neighboring species. Their defensive capabilities exceed those of any known military force, including theoretical combined fleet scenarios." Representative Vexkar from the hegemony of Zarthak requested recognition, his proud military bearing somewhat diminished since Admiral Krexanon's report. "Chancellor, my government formally withdraws all territorial claims in the Sol sector. Furthermore, we petition for immediate non-aggression treaties with human space." The murmur of surprise that rippled through the chamber was unprecedented. The hegemony had never voluntarily abandoned expansion claims or requested defensive treaties with species they considered inferior. Ambassador Rodriguez stood smoothly, waiting for recognition before speaking. "Chancellor, if I may address the concerns raised by our colleagues?" "The floor recognizes the human representative." "Thank you." Elena's voice carried across the chamber with the clear diction of someone accustomed to public speaking. "First, I want to assure this assembly that Earth remains committed to all Federation treaties and principles. Our military capabilities were developed purely for defensive purposes, and we have no territorial ambitions beyond our current borders. Representative Kelnath from the Silicon Concordium interrupted with a harmonic discord that suggested extreme agitation. Defensive capabilities that could destroy entire star systems? This represents a clear violation of Federation military limitation treaties. Elena smiled with the patience of a teacher addressing a confused student. Actually, Representative Kelnath, human space is classified as a Deathworld territory, which exempts us from standard military limitation agreements under Federation Code Section 847C. Worlds classified as uninhabitable by Federation standards are permitted to maintain whatever defensive measures their inhabitants deem necessary for survival. The chamber erupted in confused conversations as representatives realized the legal implications. The Federation had assumed that any species capable of spaceflight would naturally abandon their hostile homeworld for more habitable planets. The idea that someone would choose to remain on a death world, let alone use that classification to build unlimited military capabilities, had never occurred to the treaty writers. Chancellor Mordeth restored order with her ceremonial staff. Ambassador Rodriguez, perhaps you could clarify the extent of human defensive preparations. Certainly, Chancellor. Elena activated her personal data pad, and new information appeared on the central display. Earth Defense Command currently maintains protective installations in 47 star systems, covering all Federation member worlds that requested our assistance. We've also established security protocols for major trade routes and diplomatic corridors. The scope of human military expansion sent another wave of shock through the assembly. Representative Tysick from the botanical colonies stood abruptly. You've militarized half the Federation without anyone noticing? We've protected half the Federation, Elena corrected gently. Every installation was built with the knowledge and consent of local governments. We've been quite transparent about our activities, just not about the specific capabilities of our defensive systems. She gestured to the display, where images of human installations appeared alongside testimonials from protected worlds. The colony at Kepler 442b requested assistance with asteroid defense. New Geneva needed protection from solar flare activity. The mining stations in the Vega sector asked for security against pirate raids. We simply provided more comprehensive solutions than anyone expected. Representative Krothek from the Industrial Assembly spoke with the mechanical precision of his cybernetic species. Analysis indicates human defensive capabilities exceed theoretical maximum efficiency for known technologies. Request explanation of technological advancement beyond Federation parameters. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. Earth is a death world, Representative. Our evolution required us to develop technologies that most species consider unnecessary or impossible. We've learned to see problems that don't occur to species from more hospitable environments. She paused, choosing her words carefully. For example, most Federation species develop space technology to escape their homeworlds. Humans developed space technology to better defend our homeworld. That philosophical difference led to very different technological priorities. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every other species had abandoned their homeworld as soon as they achieved spaceflight, seeking safer, more comfortable environments. Only humans had chosen to stay and fight, turning their hostile environment into an advantage. Chancellor Mordeth leaned forward in her ceremonial chair. Ambassador Rodriguez, what are humanity's intentions regarding these capabilities? The same as they've always been, Chancellor. We want to live in peace, trade with our neighbors, and protect those who need protection. The only thing that's changed is that everyone now knows we're actually capable of fulfilling those commitments. Representative Zarthek from the Academic Coalition requested recognition. The psychological profiles in our xenological databases describe humans as cooperative, diplomatic, and relatively peaceful. How do we reconcile this with military capabilities that exceed all known parameters? Elena smiled again, and for the first time, the assembled representatives glimpsed something that reminded them of humanity's predatory origins. Deathworld psychology representative. We learned very early that the best way to avoid violence is to be so overwhelmingly prepared for it that no one wants to test your capabilities. She gestured to encompass the entire chamber. Look around you. 47 species, hundreds of worlds, thousands of potential conflicts. Now look at the Galactic Peace Index since Human Federation membership began. Piracy down 93%. Territorial conflicts down 87%. Military expenditures among member species down 64%. The statistics appeared on the central display, undeniable in their clarity. Human membership hadn't just coincided with increased galactic peace, it had directly caused it. We've been doing exactly what we promised when we joined the Federation, Elena continued. We've been protecting trade, maintaining peace, and ensuring that every member species can pursue their goals without fear. The fact that we've been more thorough about it than anyone expected shouldn't be cause for alarm. High Chancellor Mordeth consulted with her advisory council before addressing the assembly. This council recognizes that humanity has acted within all legal parameters while providing unprecedented security benefits to the Federation. However, the scale of these revelations requires formal acknowledgement. She stood, activating the ceremonial protocols that marked official Federation declarations. The Galactic Federation Council hereby recognizes Earth as a protectorate power under Federation Charter Section 1204A, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Human space is designated as a defensive alliance territory, with full authority to maintain whatever military capabilities Earth deems necessary for galactic security. The formal recognition sent ripples through the assembly. Protectorate power status was theoretically possible under Federation law, but had never been granted. It gave humanity the authority to act as official protectors of Federation space, with military authority superseding even the Federation Defense Force. Ambassador Rodriguez stood once more, her expression serene despite the magnitude of what had just occurred. Earth accepts this designation and reaffirms our commitment to galactic peace and security. We also extend an open invitation to any Federation member who wishes to visit our world and see firsthand how a Deathworld species approaches the challenges of galactic civilization. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out of the chamber, conversations buzzed with speculation about what this new reality meant. The humans had just been officially recognized as the galactic superpower they'd always been, hiding their true capabilities behind diplomatic smiles and agricultural trade agreements. Later, in the private communications suite reserved for high-priority diplomatic transmissions, Elena composed her report to Earth Defense Command. The message was brief, maintaining the casual tone that characterized human military communications. Mission accomplished. Federation Council has officially recognized our defensive authority. All member worlds now understand that the Deathworld species they've been trading with for 50 cycles has been quietly keeping them safe the entire time. Recommend continuing current operational procedures. The universe just got a lot more peaceful. She transmitted the message and leaned back in her chair, smiling at the irony. Humanity had just revealed themselves as the most dangerous species in the galaxy by demonstrating that they'd spent decades making the galaxy safer for everyone else. It was exactly the kind of paradox that defined human nature, and exactly the kind of solution that could only come from a species raised on a world that tried to kill them every single day. The Deathworld had finally spoken through its children, and its message was simple. We will protect what matters, no matter the cost, no matter the scale, and no matter who underestimates us along the way.